Good afternoon, everyone. This is Richard, and today I will be servicing my 2019 Silverado. It is the 1500 with the 2.7 liter turbo 4 motor with the 8-speed 8L90 transmission. So I've searched around for a little bit and haven't been able to find a whole lot of information on the Silverado 8-speeds. I did manage to find a few, or one 8-speed GM transmission service on a Yukon. Now I would imagine that it's probably very similar, aside from the fact that the Yukon is a V8 and my truck is a 4-cylinder. So I find it fair that I go ahead and document a transmission service for the Silverados, just in case there are any differences that I can note along the way. So here it goes. All right, so that is the fluid level bolt. You undo that, you should be able to check the fluid level. If it's dribbling out of there, once it starts to slow down, that is essentially supposed to be the capacity of the transmission. Here is what I just broke. That's how fragile this is. If you see the heat shield, right? So I inadvertently broke it. You can see right there. That thing, I literally just went like this and it came right off. So my assumption, I did have a little rattling noise. I think that's what was making the rattling noise on startup. I couldn't figure it out, but for now, we will just push forward. Now I am trying to find the service hole, and it is up here. So if you're looking to service it, the service hole is right up in there. So it looks like I'm going to have to remove this anyway. And of course, they would put the bolts, to hold that. You see where my hand is? Up here, right up here is where the bolt is that holds that heat shield in place from the top, at least. So they're definitely not gonna make it easy for you. Okay, so as I noted before, the plug, this bolt that I pulled off of what's supposed to be the fill or the level check hole, I pulled it out, started leaking, or coming out, not really leaking, but it started pulling out, and videos I've watched before mentioned that that was just a fluid level check hole. Regardless, it's coming out right now. The fluid is supposed to be red. That fluid looks to be losing its red color. So we'll see what the new fluid looks like. This fluid was changed at 7,500 miles. I had transmission issues that I had covered under warranty at 7,500 miles. And the service manual states to have your transmission serviced every 45,000 miles. And I'm sitting at just under 60, minus the 7,500 from when I serviced it, well, when I had it serviced at the dealer for the transmission issues under warranty. So even with that, they flushed the transmission, obviously put new fluid, and that still puts me over the 45,000 by a couple thousand miles. So we're at that time period where it needs to be serviced anyway. So we'll continue pushing forward. All right, so there we are with the transmission pan removed. Right there, that black filter, that black plastic covered filter is what's going to be removed. I got the pan pulled to the side right now, and I'm going to be cleaning out the magnets and replacing the gasket before I bolt it right back on, and start to fill the transmission with fluid. I am going to have a little pause here in the video because I am going to take this heat shield off, and I'm going to have to figure out, hopefully it's cool enough up here that I can run my arm up there to remove the cover or this heat shield. because like I said, the fill tube is under this heat shield up there towards the front up here, as you can see. So right where that exhaust meets, just about back there is where the fill hole is, or where the dipstick would be. So I'm gonna take a quick break, get this old fluid out the way. All right, so the pan is off. Here's the remainder of the fluid that was in there. It's pretty dirty, still has a red tint to it, but it's not anywhere near what it usually comes out as. As you can see, you can tell pretty well. I'm trying to get it in the sunlight. Right, it's pretty red, brand new, as you would expect it to be. But for 50,000 miles, this transmission fluid, it's pretty dirty. But I mean, service manual does say 45,000 mile service intervals. I'm just a hair above that at 58,000. Like I mentioned before, my transmission was serviced under warranty for a faulty solenoid. So given that it does have 50,000 miles, it's still pretty dirty. My old Dodge Ram was an 06. I serviced that thing every 40,000 miles. Wasn't even remotely close to being this dirty. I could still see through it. So I don't know if it's just a design or what. But I'm gonna go ahead and continue cleaning this pan up, drain the rest of this fluid, get that filter removed from underneath the transmission as you saw earlier, and keep moving forward. All right, so here I am wiping these magnets off. You can see the difference between the two. You can actually see the buildup. Can you? There you go. You can see the buildup on the magnet. I'm here wiping it off, but you can see the buildup of it. You can even see it. See it right there? It's like toothpaste, I guess. That's a lot of wear for me. For 50,000 miles, I don't know, maybe it's just still breaking in. I guess time will tell. You can see it kind of, where I wiped it off, you can see it's caked right there. Look at this. That's nasty. I've never had a transmission do that to me. Yeah, I guess we'll keep finding out what this thing does. I intend on keeping this truck for the long haul. I had my previous truck for 15 years. I don't intend to do anything less with this one. So hopefully time will tell, see what this transmission will do for me in the long run. Right, there's another view. Look at all that crap. That's all metal shavings. You can see it get pushed around. That's pretty nasty. Not what I imagined I would find. You can see it. Look at that. I don't know if you can. It's all I'm doing is pushing it around. You can see the magnetizing underneath it right there. Oh, this is a nasty, nasty beast. I do have the newer fluid, the synthetic HP, Dexron approved. I actually got that directly from the dealer. So obviously they gave it to me because I can't find it anywhere else, for one, and two, that's what it calls for. The previous version of this transmission fluid for these 8 speeds, or at least these newer 8 speeds, previous fluid wasn't doing so hot, so they decided to go ahead and go with this HP. They had mobile, for lack of better words, they had mobile synthesize it for them. So Hopefully this does better. When this thing was serviced, it had 7,500 miles when I had the warranty work done for the transmission solenoids. I don't know if they used HP. So once I drop this in and take it for a spin, we'll find out if over time, it probably won't happen right away, but we'll find out if over time the jerkiness of this transmission will go away. So we'll see. All right, so we are nice and clean. Let's go get that transmission filter and gasket, and let's get ready to reinstall. Okay, for references, this is the transmission filter. Unlike the older vehicles that had a like steel mesh, this one does actually have, looks to be like a fiber type filter in it, in a plastic housing. Part number 24298900. Here is the pan gasket, and looks like GM part number 24260071. So you're gonna need one of each of those. Put them right back on your oil pan and go ahead and put back on. All right, so one thing to note, it's almost impossible to put this oil pan gasket, transmission pan gasket, on the wrong way. It does come with little nubs that insert here. These grommets, as you can see, are reinforced in the center. So that's good to note, that there's no guessing to this. You know how it goes on. So you just got to make sure you line up the holes with the bolts with the bolt holes on the transmission, and you'll be good to go. All right, so here we are, about to remove the old transmission filter. It should just be a pool. And there we go. And you got a little bit more fluid coming out. I'll go ahead and drain this while we're at it. All right, so if you see the top, the gasket came out with it. So that's a good thing, because you know sometimes it does get stuck up there. I am gonna go ahead and double check to make sure nothing is torn in there, because I do have a funny story about that, and it may be true, it may not be true, because I never verified it. So back some, I want to say like, heck, it's been like 12 or 14 years. I had a 2003 Cadillac CTS. Bought it used, right? Back in 2008. This was back when gasoline was going up. I was stationed in Alaska, and regular unleaded there was extremely expensive. Definitely similar to what just happened here through COVID. Gasoline prices up there, and we're talking 2008. So gasoline prices were well above $4 for regular unleaded in Alaska. And you got to realize that Alaska fuel, anything in Alaska is just more expensive. The cost of living is ridiculous. Doesn't look like there's anything up there, so we're good. So anyway, there I am changing the transmission fluid, and this has a bunch of used fluid on it now. Oh well, it's coming back and it's gonna filter everything out. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and put some oil on this. So yeah, it's used, but it'll be okay. This isn't a combustion critical area. So anyway, I changed the fluid just like that. That's simple. So I changed the fluid. Make sure it's on there pretty good. And I know I'm kind of ranting and I stopped talking about what I'm talking, but anyway. So I changed the fluid on my 03 CTS. Just under 100,000 miles. Two weeks later, it breaks down. Now, when I drained the fluid, it was pretty gray, like not even a red tint like you see in this truck. It was pretty gray. I probably should have just dumped that fluid back in, but I didn't. I thought I was doing the right thing by changing the fluid, and 2 weeks later, it broke. Hard shifting, hard upshifting, hard downshifting. I mean, you name it, it was doing it. And we had just bought this car. It was used, I get it, but we had just bought this car, and here I am throwing in another $3,000 into a used car I literally just bought. So make sure you clean the gasket area. Fortunately, there's no RTV you have to deal with, like, you know, some of these older vehicles, but you still want to get them clean. You know, dirt and grime still get stuck in there. So anyway, back to the car again. Dumping money into it. I think it was a combination of possibly that gasket getting stuck in there and fluid that had just spent too much time in the transmission. I probably should have just left it alone and let it die. It probably would have lasted longer if I left that fluid in. I put brand new fluid in. I'm assuming just the pressure of the transmission flushes it, pushes all this dirt and grime through the valves and stuff. They pulled it apart, showed it to me. It was horrible. Scoring everywhere. So, lesson learned, always service your transmission. You know, if you're not gonna do it according to schedule, every schedule is different. Nowadays, some of these companies say they're filled for life and you never have to service them. Could be true, and it could work, and it might last you 200,000 miles. Or it might not. Regardless of how long it lasts you, this fill for life crap, that means you don't service it unless, one, it's leaking, two, if it has a dipstick and you notice it's low, you fill it, and if it's excessive, you service it. But with all these new vehicles, even my truck doesn't have a dipstick, and it's a truck. So, you know, they say fill for life, but then you'll talk to a tech and they're like, oh yeah, bring it in every, 40 to 50,000 miles, 40 to 60,000 miles, or whatever the case is. Fill for life or not, service them. They'll last you that much longer. All right, so filters in. As you can see, it's a little finicky. I'm trying to find the right spot it's supposed to be in, because it feels like I have some resistance on the filter itself. I did notice that this filter does have a little, what should we call it? It's got a little aluminum tab on the backside. So I don't know if that's supposed to be there. I didn't notice that on the previous one. But, I mean, it's seating just fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and push forward with this. Just gonna make sure just gotta make sure the holes on the gaskets line up. That way you don't have any issues. I'm just loosely putting them in so they hold. Making sure that gasket nubs are still in those holes on the side, which mine are, if you can see. Right there, still there. Coming around here to the front side. Still there. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and just push forward. All right, so I went ahead and seated the bolts down with my little 1/4 inch wrench. This only calls for 95 foot-pounds. So I don't want to overdo it, even though this isn't a really huge torque wrench. It is a lot larger than the little 1/4 inch ratchet that I have. So, from lessons learned in the past, I will seat them with the smaller wrench, hand tight, and then check their torque with the bigger wrench in an effort to not strip these bolts. All right, double check those, double check that, there we go. So the pan is back on, nice and clean. All right, now let's get to putting some fluid in this baby. All right, so I have the pump in. The pump doesn't actually fit on this quart container, so I am having to be very careful as I am filling it, making sure not to spill this. I'm holding, let's see if I can get underneath it. Apologize if I can't. That's about the best view I can give you. You can see that I'm holding the nozzle in place, and I'm slowly pumping fluid into the transmission. This pump generally fits in this quart container. As you can see, I'm just about done with this quarter transmission fluid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap bottles and continue. So I have 7.5 of these to do. So in order to so I don't bore you with the transition of this, I'm gonna go ahead and pause, continue servicing the transmission, continue filling the transmission, should I say, and I'm gonna go ahead and come back once I'm done with that. Pretty simple. Well, I say simple. You need your pump, your fluid pump. As I mentioned before, you're gonna remove that cap up there, and you're gonna make sure you have the hose pump seated in there. I don't even know if you can see it. I'm trying to. Forgive me if you can't. But yeah, I have it there. I'm holding it while I'm pumping. I'm pumping from a quart bottle to which that pump doesn't even seal to. I can't screw that on. It's not the same threads. All right, so I'm about halfway, maybe a little bit more than halfway, to filling up my transmission. I've got, as you can see, I got the line running up here. You can kind of see where it finishes or where it leads to, but because I don't have, one, I don't have my truck on a jack like I should. Two, I don't have an automatic pump, so I have my pump up against I got my bottled pump up against the drive shaft, and I'm just pushing up. You gotta make do with what you got. I'm doing okay, just taking me a lot longer than I anticipated because of some of the unanticipated difficulties. Regardless, it's getting done. I will be back as soon as I'm done. Okay, so finally I have finished filling up my transmission. The manual, and I confirmed this from the dealership, calls for about 7.5 quarts. Right here is the fill hole. I've already corked it back up with the that little cork, expandable cork that it comes with right here. Like I mentioned before, this is where the dipstick would be, and my hand is stuck. Anyway, this heat shield, piece of crap. I'm pretty certain, like I said before, the previous dealership probably broke that for me, so they didn't have to deal with it either. I would have just taken it off, but this is right next to the exhaust following the catalytic converter, so I don't know how much heat this is generating towards that. So for the time being, I'm just gonna push it back in like it probably just was. Excuse me. All right, so what I'm probably gonna end up doing is getting a large washer just to kind of keep it in there. All right, moment of truth. Here we go. Everything seems to be running just fine. Well, it's also just startup. We'll let the transmission suck in all that fluid. I'm gonna go ahead and run it through the gears. Alright, there's reverse. There's neutral. There's drive. Put it in low. Drive. All right. Looks like we're getting good shifts at park. Now we're gonna take it for a spin as soon as I clean up this last bit of mess here. We'll be on our way.